final apportionings of inheritances, nachalot, to the tribes of the Jewish people. What I like to do is maybe see the last 3 or 4 tribes and understand some of the inner properties, some of the inner matters of the tribes, that their personalities, yes, there are tribal personalities that have a connection to this parcel of land, to this region in the land of Israel. What I'm opening up at the same time, you don't have to, but I'm purposely looking to the blessings of Yaakov Avinu next week in the finale of the book of Bereshit, right prior to his death. We see prophetically his blessings to the tribes. So what I want to see is the last tribal portions, and I want to start from verse 24, which is the 5th lot. Let's remember, 2.5 tribes made an agreement with Moshe Rabbeinu in the 40th year of Am Yisrael's desert travel. And here, Yehuda came forward first, and thereafter Benjamin. So we're left with more or less 6 or 7 tribes left to be allocated. I want you to see right now the tribe of Asher. Let's notice some towns that maybe even some of you, through your traveling in Israel, may know. And it says in verse 27 that Upaga Bizvulun, a neighbor, a tribal neighborhood of a town of the tribe of Asher is which tribe? Zvulun. Asher is close to Zvulun. And here we see lands, some of you may know Kana, maybe not. Mm-hmm. But look where Asher goes all the way up to, Ad Sidon. Okay? Here we're talking about if Asher is in the lower Galilee, but it goes all the way up to Zidon, which is a coastal port, Sidon, Zidon, and certainly Tzur, which is Tyre. Other places I don't want to mention, but we're basically understanding Asher has a northwestern side of Eretz Yisrael. Now remember, Asher, the tribe of Asher, the son himself, was the product of the Shivcha, the maidservant of Leah. What's special about him that he's up north? We know that this upper Galilee is one of the most fertile areas in the country, especially for the growth of olive trees. If I look at Yaakov's bracha to the tribe Asher himself, I find something very interesting. And it says, Me Asher Shmeina Lachmo. Amos and I were kidding around before, sure. He was alluding to the fact that I was fat, shemen, right? But he meant shemen, olive oil. The word fat comes from the word shemen. Out of Asher, Yaakov prophesizes, will his bread be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. My dear friends, material matters are stated here. But the Midrash gives us the inner understandings of what this tribe is. Asher is all the way up in olive oil. And this olive oil, the Talmud or the Midrash, they both say, was brought to the Beit HaMikdash. In other words, this physical pleasure of wealth, fats of the land, the Shemen Zayit, which is one of the 7 special fruits of the land of Israel, it was used for spiritual purposes. Secondly, the Midrash tells us that the women of the tribe of Asher were like the top women of Israel, and that a high likelihood to be married to Kohanim and even Kohen Gadol during the time of Temple Period 1 we see. And therefore, we see that their area, and they're related to oil, to wisdom, they're related to light. It's not just a physical feature that they're in an area and the fats of the land they're enjoying, but also they're related to spiritual properties of the nation. What else is the oil used in the Beit HaMikdash?
Menorah.
What else in addition to the menorah?
Purifying the korbanot, like you're mixing up the
Every korban is accompanied by nisuch hayayin, a wine libation, pouring of wine, and also a mincha, a meal offering, which you said correctly, mixed with fine flour, and oil. So they had the merit of bringing oil to the Beit HaMikdash. That's what I wanted to see regarding Asher. Let's go on. Zot. So this section ends in verse 31. Zot nachalat matei b'nei Asher lemishpechotam harim ha'ela, these cities v'chatzreim, and their courtyards. And now we're up to the next tribe, Lamed Bet 32, Livnei Naphtali. Naphtali. Let's see where they are. Yatza, the lot comes. Remember, this is miraculous. The Kohen Gadol is there. He's wearing his Choshen Mishpat, his breastplate, which has a fold in it, and inside is a parchment with the 72-letter name of the Holy One, blessed be HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And two areas, one, names of tribes mixed in this area, and another, regions of the land of Israel. What comes up is Naphtali. To where? Let's see if we know some names. In Lamed Gimel, there's a town you may know today called Yavne'el. It's right before the Kinneret when we're coming from the south. Yavne'el. And it borders the Yarden, the Jordan River. So we know that maybe the most southern area is Yavne'el. Let's just point to where is Yavne'el. Here's the Kinneret. So this is south of the Kinneret, and there's a tall mountain here where a big war happened in the book of Shoftim. It's mentioned in the next pasuk in 34. V'shava gvul yama. Then the border goes west. Aznot Tavor. The ear is the area of the Tavor mountain. Did we go on a Golan trip during your year?
I think we did, yeah.
Did we view and see the Tavor mountains from the Golan?
We did.
Stop telling us.
No, it is.
In any event, we're talking about the lower Galilee. We call it Hebrew Hagalil Tachton. Okay, and now we're learning about Naphtali. You saw Asher here, you saw Naphtali here, but Naphtali has a strip of land next to the Kinneret, and it goes down to the lower Galilee, even though it's north of Yisachar and it is east of Zvulun. And there's a mountain there, the Tavor mountain. Who remembers which famous war happened in that area in the book of Shoftim, next Sefer? A woman prophet? Devorah. Right? The Canaanite entities from Lebanon infiltrated, and God sends Devorah. Her chief of staff is called Barak ben Avinoam, and he's a little afraid to go to the war. And she says, you want to be a sissy? Do you want to have a war called after the name of a woman, or do you want to do the war yourself? She literally tells him that. In any event, so he gets his guts up, and they win a war. God involved himself, but that we'll learn in the book of Shoftim. That's Tavor. So it says, Upaga, in verse 34, follow, Upaga bizvulun Negev. The border of Naphtali touches Zvulun in the south. Don't understand Negev meaning the Negev of the Judean desert or there. Uva Asher Pagamiam. And Naphtali west, on the western side, touches Yam. And how is it related to Yehuda? What do you mean Yehuda? Yehuda's all the way down south. It means the Jordan River. He has the area next to the Jordan River as well. So we're saying that Naphtali has this area over here and the Jordan River, just like here. The Jordan River is part of Yehuda. What other towns perhaps we know? Here you see them, 35. The Arei Mivtzar, cities of fortress, Hatzidim. Tzer, V'chamat, Rakat, V'Kinneret. So here you see the Kinneret, the Galilee. But Chatzor, in verse 36 today, is a development town. right next to Tzfat. Some of you know Chatzor. And 37, Kedesh. Kedesh, we call these mountains, see this area, the color over here, are mountains. These are called the Kedesh Mountains. They're mentioned in the Chumash as one of 6 cities of refuge, 3 on the west side of the Jordan River, 3 on the east side. So you get an idea that from the Kinneret going up to the upper Galilee, I'm purposely raising my finger because the upper Galilee is nicknamed Etzba HaGalil. Why is it named Etzba? Because that's the form. In the 1960s and 70s, we had terrible problems with the Hezbollah in Lebanon. They are, here's Israel, Naphtali, and here's the Lebanese, in our present day, the Lebanese terrorist, okay, is sitting in our land in Avasher. Okay, you tell that to the United Nations, okay? And the mountains here are called the Kadesh Mountains. Now, anyone that ever travels up there knows that it's one of the most fertile areas in the country. Fertile areas in the country. The valley there is called the Hula Valley, of the greatest productions of apples and pears and nectarines and all this. And that's one of the famous places where a lot of people enjoy going hiking and Tiolim. There are a lot of springs there. Kayakim, they take the rubber. What do they put?
The tires, right?
The panini of the tires. What is it called? The tubes of the tires of truck. You go to garage, you buy it for 60, 70 shekels, and just go down the Jordan River all the time, going back and forth. We've done it many times with our kids over all the years. Just hang out there in the shade, just go down and enjoy. It's a very fertile area. If I look at the bracha of Naphtali by Yaakov Avinu, next week's parsha, Yaakov prophesies and says the following: Naphtali ayala shlucha. Naphtali is like an ayala. What is it? Which animal did we see now in the south in our trip? Ayala, the ibex. Shlucha, it's sent out. It's living in mountains. Okay? Hanotein imrei shefer. What is Naphtali here? He gives goodly words. The Talmud talks about Naphtali. They're happy all the time. How you doing? Mabsur, he's happy. Everything's okay. He always sees good things. Never is complaining. He has always imrei shefer. Oh, he has good words. How are you? You're from the tribe. Mabsur, I'm happy. Just giving my work, my agriculture, give me a little learning of Torah. And the students of Naphtali that were learning Torah, the Midrash says, they would have this sense of savory taste. The Talmud says that when they had their learning of Torah, dvash v'chalav, yotzei mipihem. They had like honey and milk coming out of their mouth, as if, metaphorically, of course, the Torah was so savory, the Torah was so sweet, okay? Just like Usher, okay? Just like when Usher was living up north and he had all the olive oil, and he was also happy, but Naphtali even more. He senses the sweetness of the fruits and has an impact on his life. What we're noticing here, my dear friends, is there's a spiritual compatibility between the region, the particular region of the land of Israel, and the personality or makeup of the tribe. It's not by mere incidents. And therefore the Kohen Gadol with his breastplate was involved with the lots coming out. It was this spiritual involvement that God commanded. When we get to Parshat Pinchas and Bamidbar, this is the way, through a Goral, through a lot system, that the land is going to be issued. We come up to your question, Reuven.
Question on what you just said. There's a spiritual compatibility of the makeup of the land. And if we can apply that to today, like let's say you moved to the area of Naphtali, would the land kind of, overtake you in the sense that like your personality would in a way get morphed into
it all
happiness.
Depends. It all depends. If you want to change from becoming a businessman to be a farmer, it all depends. There's no doubt that the land is talking back, reacting to the Jewish people coming back to its land. The Hula Valley with all its orchards is the yield per dunam of the highest in the world. We have so much, quote unquote, of a surplus of fruits that are growing in this country. Are we not exporting into the European common market?
Okay.
No, you don't think so?
Can.
In the last 20, 30 years,
Yes.
in Germany and Holland and many other countries, you see the fruits of the land of Israel. Why? Because we still have 3 million Jews in Brooklyn. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Get our brothers back here. We have so much room. That's how my Rabbi, my rabbi, my teacher of Zalman Melamed, Rosh Hashiva of Beit El, explained to us how in the beginning of the 90s when the communist world fell and they were economically, Russia was going to bits and pieces, wasn't it? People were waiting online to buy basic products like soap and everything else in the beginning of the 90s, right? When the Berlin Wall, everything fell. Who sent out plane loads of tomatoes to Russia then? We. What? We? You can't even see us on the map, only with a microscope on the world map. We're sending out plane loads, hundreds of tons of tomatoes to Russia? Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense. The land is talking back to us. We're coming back. The revival is starting. The land is giving out what historians saw when Metudel and others left Spain on their ships and coming to Israel in the 1200s. They saw the land was desolate. Every entity, national entity that came and tried to rule the land, they were not capable of tilling the land. Why? Because the land is married to Israel, but right now she's a widow when we're not here. I want to see the last.
Thank you.
The last allotment. Who is it in verse 40?
Dan.
Dan. Are you crying? Why, let's just say you're from Dan. I want to pick on you today. Why are you last? Is there a reason why you're last? Let's remember from which mother the tribe of Dan originates. No. Shifcha of Rachel, right? The Shifcha of Rachel, the maidservant of Rachel. And he's the last. Now, when we're learning the book of Bamidbar and we're traveling in the desert, and there's a divine makeup, how to travel in the desert, who's last?
Also Dan.
Dan. Are they losers? Because they're losers? Is that why they're last? Maybe they have a... I'm going to ask you, I want to take military advice. Bevakasha. Sir, who should be in the rear? What type of tribe? Leaders. Why do you want leaders in the rear?
Because if there's an ambush.
Because if there's a what?
An ambush.
If there's an ambush, if there's an attack from the back. Who attacked us from the back when we came out of Mitzrayim? Who? Amalek. We need strong fighters. Now, let's open up the traffic report. This is Menachem Listman speaking for Machon Meir News. In Gush Dan, the highways are like parking lots. Where is Gush Dan, the block of area of Dan? Let's read. Tell me names of you know. First of all, let's go to the low Judean hills in verse 41. Vayigvul nachlatam tzorah, eshtaol, and Ir Shamesh or Shemesh. Gentlemen, the lower Judean hills, hop, skip, and jump, about 25 minutes from here, we get to the Beit Shemesh area underneath your nose. We're just 10 minutes from you, right? We're 10 minutes from you, the Beit Shemesh, Tzorah Eshtaol, famous areas in the book of Shoftim. Who is that mighty solo fighter that fought for the tribe of Dan against the Plishtim and caused them havoc and economic devastation? What's his name? Shimshon. Very good. He comes from the tribe of Dan. So the first area we're told is the western Judean hills. If this is the mountain area, about 800 to 900 meters of altitude height, we go down to a place of 250, the area of Eshtaol, Azekah. Azekah is the area where Goliath fought Beit Shemesh. I don't know if it's noted here, but here we have Beit Shemesh. Here it is, Shemesh, Beit Shemesh. Today in Beit Shemesh, they're building thousands and thousands of housing units. A lot of Anglos have moved to Ramat, Beit Shemesh, and all these areas. Other names you may know, Shalabim, 42. Shalabim, is further west en route to Tel Aviv. We have a great yeshiva community there called Emek Ayalon. What is it called? First, we have a yeshiva Hesder there, a Shalabim community named after this place. Okay, so that's a further western area. We have Ayalon. What do they call the Tel Aviv Expressway today? Ayalon. Do you see that in verse 42? Asher. Oh, another place, Ekron. Ekron is already towards Rehovot. But let's go to 45. Yehud. Yehud is the neighboring community next to the airport. Yehud. What's the next town? I can't read it in Hebrew. Bnei Brak. Yes, you've heard Bnei Brak? That's, okay. Givat Shmuel. Okay. Next to Bnei Brak, Coca-Cola industry there. Right? That's not written here. Coca-Cola, but we all know that the big Coca-Cola filling place is it next to Bnei Brak on the main highway. Mei Yarkon, the waters of the Yarkon. There's a little river that brings in water Tel Aviv called the Yarkon. So, and all this is where does it border on what western port? Yafa. So we see Dan where it is. Now let's go back to the traffic report. Do you understand what I'm saying? Petach Tikva, Bnei Brak are the most congested today, thank God, the most congested neighborhoods, cities in Eretz Yisrael. And that's why the roads can't even carry half of the traffic, okay? The only way they're building there is building up in the sky. That's where they're building. So that is done. Now what happened to Dan? Vayetzei gvul b'nei Dan meham. Okay, the borders come out of there, but they're leaving their area, it says. Vayetzei, they went out from there. What did they do? What we're told now prophetically by Yehoshua, the writer of Sefer Yehoshua, the prophet, is that they're not satisfied with the Gush Dan area. What do they do? What we're about to read right now, Rashi says here on the place, is this happens in the next period of time. The book called Sefer Shoftim, which transpires of a period of time of more than 300 years after the passing away of Yehoshua. It says here, they went up to Leshem. Leshem? Yes, Leshem. Vayilkeduota, they captured this place, Leshem. Vayakuota, lefi cherev, they killed all the people there with their swords. There were Canaanites there. Vayushuota, they inherited the area of Yeshua, and they're living there. And they called Leshem Dan, the name of their father. Is there a Dan up north? Sure there is. What is the tallest mountain in Israel? The Hermon, 2,000 meters above sea level. Okay? Above, here's Naphtali, but here is the most difficult area to secure in Israel, the Hermon area. It's a gigantic, massive area. A small part of it is in Lebanese hands. And it's hard and it's cold right now. Snow started coming down for the first time yesterday on the Hermon Mountains.
There's no fence there either.
Right? And I want to understand about the personality of this tribe and the area that they conquer. What we're seeing here, gentlemen, is a prophecy that they go up to the Hermon area and they conquer the area and they call it Dan. And the waters that are coming out of the mountains, they call it the Dan River. And the Dan goes into the Jordan River. And then the Jordan spills into the Kinneret. And the Kinneret spills back into the next part of the Jordan River. And that part of the Jordan River spills into the Yam HaMelech, the Dead Sea. Now you may understand when you go hiking up north into the upper Galilee. So you're going to, what's that village of the eight? What is it called in Hebrew up north? Kiryat Shmona. Kiryat Shmona. That is the Naphtali Mountains, Kedesh Mountains, which next chapter or next year we'll see will be one of 6 Arei Miklat, cities of refuge for people that kill accidentally. Okay, and to the upper Galilee, but the eastern side under the Hermon, we see that the tribe of Dan goes ahead and captures. And we want to understand why. I'm looking at the words of Moshe Rabbeinu and Yaakov Avinu in respect to Dan. Moshe Rabbeinu, in his prophecy, right before his passing away, in Deuteronomy 33, Uledan Amar, Dan, Gur, Aryeh. There are several tribes that are likened to lions. Yehuda, we know the symbol of Yehuda is a lion, right? But Dan is likened to a Gur Aryeh, a lion's cub. And Moshe says, Yizanek min Bashan. We learned already the geographic name of east of the Kinneret, where the Golan is a city of. The greater region is called the Bashan region. What's the name of that big
Og.
Og? His noun sounds like he's a giant. Og. Just pronounce it. It sounds like a giant, doesn't it? Okay. Moshe Rabbeinu prophesizes according to the personality of Dan, and you all said you have to be fierce people to be in the rear. They're going to be pouncing on the enemies from the Bashan. Okay? They're going to be the Sayarot, right? Our special forces. So here you see that the personality or image of the tribe of Dan is likened to a lion pouncing on its prey. And of course, its objective is to reveal its inner personality. In the book of Bamidbar, in chapter 10, when we learn about the divine makeup of the tribes, how they're going to travel, who's going to be in the rear? Dan, ha'me'asef, l'chol ha'machanot. Sometimes we go on a hike, we ask someone to be in the rear. I want you to be the ma'asef. They would collect lost and found items, lost and found people that are getting lost in the desert. They would be in the rear. And you know what? They don't fall far behind the tribe of Yehuda. That they too, Yaakov Avinu's words about Yehuda is a Gur Aryeh. The same words, Gur Aryeh Yehuda. We're going to see it next week. He's a lion's cub as well. So it's interesting that they're courageous. They are going to be pouncing from the Bashan mountains on their prey like a lion. That's the metaphor. But let's look to TOO at the words of Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu, next week's parsha, chapter 49 of Breshit, says the following. Dan Yadin Amo. He's going to judge his people from the word Ladun. Great scholars, judges, as we read in the book of Divrei Yamim, the book of Chronicles, come out of the tribe of Dan. Ke'achad Shiftei Yisrael is one of the tribes of Israel. They're going to be judging their people. Very special. Ke'achad, from the word miyuchad, special. Now listen to this. This is a little tricky, but I have to say it anyway. Don't prosecute me, please, until I finish. Yehi Dan nachash alei derech. Dan shall be like a snake on the road. Shvifon alei orach. Hanoshech ikvei sus. He bites the horse's heels. Vayipol rochvo achor. Now, this fighter just got out of the army called Natan. Piskorsky, nothing to do with the young man sitting next to him, except for everything. He worked for PR, and that's why he brought his brother here. That's what I thought. He's probably going to prosecute and say, Menachem, it's not right. We don't want to be likened to, Nechashim. We know that there are enemies. They act to us like snakes. They bite us from the back and here, and they do all these tricks. You know what the answer is? I heard from one of my rabbis, Rabbi Kashtiel and Eli. He says, that's exactly what we need. There are times that Jewish people have to fight like the Goyim are fighting. Tricking us, flying to us like serpents. Okay? We don't see, all of a sudden he jumps up and he bites you. When you're living up north, in the terrain of the Hermon mountain range, and you have Lebanon and Syria, you have our enemies, the frontier enemies. You need people that know how to act like nechashim, like snakes. Dan, in the prophecy of Yaakov Avinu, he's acting like he knows how to act like snakes. Rashi, when we get to that place next week, God willing, Rashi there, I think, talks about Shimshon. Shimshon. Let's relate or remind ourselves of the scenario, the national scenario. Next book of Tanakh, Sefer Shoftim. Am Yisrael is in a spiritual doldrums, spiritual lows, no national unity, no national or federal leadership whatsoever. And in comes the Plishtim from southwestern Israel, and they're causing terrible things to the Jewish people, and no one's standing up. Shimshon from Dan, he's a manipulator. As if he marries these shiksas. What's a shiksa in English? A non-Jewish girl. That's what it appears like. Rambam says, don't worry. He did gior for each and every one before he married them. Don't think he marries these lovely women, and his eyes are very attracted to these gorgeous women of the people of Plishtim. But it's all an alibi in order to enter into the camp of the Plishtim and go ahead and try to infiltrate and attack them when they're not looking. You don't want me to do that again? Okay. Now you understand why Ariel is sitting so far away from me. Yeah. In any event, Shimshon, because of that the national level of pride was so low, he was a solo actor, and he devastated. He did all the tricks. He tied the tails of foxes, put them ablaze, and they ran all over the fields of the Plishtim.
That was awesome.
And it was an awesome thing that he did. Okay? He's like a Nachash, Shimshon, from the tribe of Dan. We're talking about, obviously. Let me ask you.
You're not allowed to torture animals.
What's the halachic answer? Do you think you're a good question?
Capturing the land of Israel.
Pikuach nefesh. There's
Okay.
a national danger to the Jewish people. They're devastated. They're ruling over us. So he wants to instill fear. So you're allowed to break anything and everything to save Jewish lives. My dear friends, as we're finishing here, that they capture a place called Leshem, which later is called Adan. And with this, more or less, the Tanakh says in verse 49, Vayichalu. Wow. Do you see the first word there in 49, Memtet? Vayichalu. Can you make an association to a very popular word that happens in the Chumash at the end of something else? Here we're talking about the completion of allocating Linchola to Aretz, Ligvuloteh to its borders, Vayitnu b'nei Yisrael nachala Yehoshua, and then they give a special place to Yehoshua. But the word Vayichalu, what word do you remember? Vayichulu. What does that mean? What was ended?
Creation, completion.
Very good. Quote, the end of Breshit Aleph, we'll say it tomorrow night, God willing. Vayichulu, what was ended? Hashamayim ve'ha'aretz, heaven and earth. It's a very special word. The same word at the end of the book of Shemot is used upon completion of the building of what structure?
Mishkan.
The Mishkan. Wow. As if the final development of the Mishkan is parallel to the creation of heaven and earth. That's how important it is. And here too, I didn't see this, but it's coming to my mind. I'm making this association. Maybe it's written in the Midrash. Allocating the land of Israel according to its tribes is a major event to the Jewish people. And therefore, it's not by mere incidents that the Tanakh uses. The prophet used this word, Vayichalu lincholet haaretz ligvuloteh. Now, I want to end today's shiur with this tribe of Dan, which is really something amazing. The fact that they went up north, and they were not satisfied with Bnei Brak and Petach Tikva and Givat Shmuel and all these areas, and they're going up north, and we see that it's very applicable to their personality, to be like snakes, to be responsible, to show no fear to the enemies, and therefore living in frontier lands. And they went ahead and fought by themselves. And the Tanakh in the book of Shoftim describes their capturing of land with a lot of great details. It's in chapter 1, verse 34. And we see that it's really backed up by Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu says they're going to be pouncing from the Bashan. Okay? So can we ask ourselves the question, is this designation or their vision of, I hope everything is okay, is this something lechatchila initially that they should have been doing? That I'm not so sure by myself. I see Rabbi Hanan Porat, one of our great Tanakh teachers, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, brings, because when Moshe Rabbeinu passes away at the end of the book, and אני גומר את השיעור עוד דקה, בסדר? My wife usually knows not to call me. I'm sorry for the interruption. Maybe it's really so much lechatchila, but it has to be done by Dan himself. Are your New Balance? This is Avram Avinu. Are your New Balance sneakers on? I thought.
Yeah.
Did you hear about your nephew who was taken into captivity? He's a POW down in the Jordan Valley. What? You
Mhm.
still love him even though he said, I don't want you and I don't want your God? He ran after those 4 Persian Gulf and kingdoms that came into the Jordan Valley area and took Lot into captivity. And there it says, and I'm quoting, Avram Avinu goes all the way up in hot pursuit. He's not a youngster like me. He's an old man. And it says, quote, Vayurdof ad da, prophecy.
Mm.
That area in the future will be called Dan. Furthermore, after Moshe Rabbeinu could not get an entry visa to go into the land of Israel, he got the second best thing. He got special binoculars, spiritual binoculars, to see the country. And it says, and I'm quoting, and this is one of his last words, he's looking at Kol Haaretz, et Gilad ad Dan.
Mhm.
Here are the Giladi Mountains. The northern Giladi Mountains, the southern Giladi Mountains. And above the Kinneret is the Bashan,
And then
or the Golan. And Dan, we said, is just even above. So he's looking from the Gilad, from south, to the north, to the Dan. So based upon these descriptions, it could very well be that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving freedom of choice. The land of Israel proper is given to Dan. You get Bnei Brak, you get Shmuel, you get all these to be heavily populated areas, but they sense something in their souls. We don't have to be in central Israel. We have to be by the frontiers. And they went up there, conquered the land, lived there, and protected Israel from the north. And that's considered good initiative. And it gives us security, because the more we can secure Israel from our northern borders, we have a lot of enemies, and Assyria was coming in, and Babylon would come through, and so on and so forth. So we're very thankful to the tribe of Dan. We'll continue with this short, God willing, next week. Can hit this over there. Thank you. Shalom, gentlemen. Both, yeah. Nothing round trip ticket to get our